Next up, we're hearing from Warren Johnson, who I mentioned earlier is the founder of W Communications. Warren has more than 15 years' experience working on high-profile retail and consumer brands, including Nestle, Unilever, Coca-Cola, Nike, Mercedes-Benz, and Eurostar. Now, we asked him to speak today after seeing what the guys did to launch Meat Liquor. Don't know if anyone's managed to get to Meat Liquor. It's a burger bar with a difference. We were joking earlier that none of us could get in because of the queues, I think. But what they did was they harnessed the power of social media to build an army of advocates. And Warren's going to talk us through how he did it and the results and all the rest. So over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So, yes, I'm the founder of W Communications. We're going to talk through the launch of Meat Liquor, which, for those of you that don't know, is a restaurant that we recently financially backed, opened, and subsequently won the PR Week Award for Best Media, Culture and Sport campaign. And we were sort of quite proud to have been pulled out by Tony Wang, who I think at the time was the general manager of Twitter, who'd highlighted our campaign as a sort of best-in-class use of Twitter to drive sort of business value. I must confess, though, that before we did that, I didn't really know what social media was or how to use it, or had PR'd a restaurant before. So we had quite an interesting and quite steep learning curve, which I'm proud to say we sort of worked through. And we now run a lot of social media campaigns for clients such as Soho House, Hendrick's Gin, and Siemens. And we've also actually got quite a good restaurant division now, so we learned something on our journey. For those of you that don't know us, we are a relatively new PR agency. We're about 3.5 years old. We we're about 30 strong, and we work with some of the best brands in the world, from sort of doing integrated campaigns for our heaving booze cabinet of alcohol clients, such as Hendrick's Gin and Drambuie, through to a lot of kind of red carpet fashion stuff at the Oscars with Spencer Hart, all the way through to campus engagement with Jack Wills. But I think the thing that we're most known for is our media division, which probably represents a good chunk of the UK media. We represent all of the Lebedev newspapers. I'm very proud to launch The Eye, which is the first national newspaper to launch for about 25 years. We also represent Viacom and all of their sort of channels, and then Hearst, which has got about 25 print titles. And what sort of, I guess, the point to all of this is that we have spent a lot of time working with a huge amount of editors as clients, which can be pretty daunting. But what we've really learned is the power of social media advocacy to actually drive the mainstream news agenda. And actually what's fascinating is that a lot of the editors we talk to barely even use news feeds anymore. They use Twitter as their primary news source. So we're going to talk through about how we applied some of those principles to the Meat Liquor launch campaign. If my slides click. Aha. So we sort of took what was a burger van in deepest, darkest South London, all the way through to a restaurant empire, which is now repeatedly declined offers around the £15 million mark, and it's something that we did with a sort of an anti-launch strategy and an anti-PR strategy, and it was all about harnessing the power of some kind of really key social advocates, and at all times, even as we got bigger and bigger, always ensuring that they were the people that we were engaging first and foremost. I'll just give you a bit of a sort of potted history. We worked with a guy called Yanni Papoutsis, who kind of really led the kind of street food scene that's sort of emerged over the last 3 or 4 years. And he was a sort of very early proponent of using Twitter to sort of drive immediate attendance at some of these sort of pop-up restaurants. And we sort of entered around the time that they had got together with an old friend of mine, Scott Collins, to launch their first ever sort of permanent pop-up, if that makes sense. It was above a disused pub in deepest, darkest New Cross, not quite the most sort of glamorous of locations that we were used to promoting. And what was interesting was that they were able to fill a place where you had to sort of get up to the fire escape in the middle of nowhere, fill it with people for sort of 3 months straight. And we worked with them on launching it. And like I said, I was probably a bit of a social media virgin at that point, and we were sort of fascinated on the way that they were using a very, very small, very highly engaged group of food bloggers to drive a lot of conversations, and in turn harness their own networks to drive incredible amounts of footfall to seemingly things that weren't wildly appealing. And so we took quite a brave step when we worked with them to help sort of dial up their launch with a view over time to hopefully helping them open a bricks and mortar site. And for the first 3 or 4 days, our PR strategy around it was to do nothing, which felt a little bit risky at the time. But we were so confident in the sort of passion of the people that were most highly engaged that they were giving immediate real-world experiences to. And I think that was the point I took out of your speech, which is, it's there's lots of brilliant measuring tools and widgets and things, but all of this is down to people. And our approach to engaging people is to create amazing real-world experiences, which they can then go and tell people about, which is kind of really the principle of PR as well. So what we then did is we didn't want to do PR around asking AA Guild to come down and review our restaurant. That's just, those guys are old hat, and their copy runs 6 to 8 weeks late. So we wanted we realised that we're on the cusp of a really interesting kind of trend and even kind of food phenomenon. So we let social media do its thing, and then within 3 or 4 days, we then pointed some lifestyle writers in the direction of the conversations that were happening on Twitter. At no point did we issue a press release. At no point did we ask anyone to review the food. The result, and that was that they were able to see the kind of passion and excitement and look at the quality of people that were talking about this place. And within 5 days, we had the front cover of the Evening Standard and a 3-page feature inside as referencing it as the coolest restaurant in London. So, and that carried on. What was meant to be a 2-week pop-up ran for 4 months. And again, we didn't really do much. We just kind of fine-tuned who were exposed to those conversations. Our next challenge was to figure out how we could help the guys launch their first restaurant, which was about 7 or 8 months later. For those of you who have been, you'll be familiar with the site of that queue on the bottom right, which is still there to this day. But our challenge was to, we realised that our kind of core advocates had really helped build the business, and they were the most important people to us. And at no point could we be seen to be selling out. Now, whilst it's, for those of you that have been, it's kind of beneath a dirty, grubby NCP car park in W1, but for others, that's quite glamorous compared to a Peckham car park. So it was important to be seen not to have sort of sold out and be very kind of true to the people that helped sort of really co-create the brand and the business together. So we were very keen to kind of drip feed some kind of key interesting stories that really only the hardcore fans would really understand, would really kind of appreciate, and they were the only people invited to the soft opening. There were no sort of traditional media, no media, no VIPs, and we really kind of curated a really interesting kind of first night experience for them, which is kind of based on a lot of the experiences that they'd had at the original pop-up. And the net result really was that it was kind of queues around the block, and it sort of has been for the last 2 years. But again, no press releases, no restaurant critics. We had a curious problem, which I think most brands would die for, but we were too much coverage was running. I think within a month we'd had 500 pieces of coverage or something ridiculous from, and it was never kind of food critics. It was kind of Vogue and Tatler and sort of quite posh titles like that. And we started getting referred to as the coolest restaurant in London, which is very flattering, but doesn't play well for long-term business success, and actually is really going to piss the people off that have really helped build it in the first place. So the reason it was so successful is it was a great experience designed for people. So we went out of our way to ensure that we used some of our core advocates to, we kind of gave them sneak peeks of recipes of new food things that weren't actually on the menu, and again ensured that our food credentials were absolutely paramount, and we gave our kind of core advocates the tools with which to deliver that. we then subsequently had to start opening more and more sites with them. And again, we ensured that at no point was anything done to kind of undermine the credibility of what we've done. And really, we've had the same expanding but similar group of people that we've really taken from site to site. We're just in the process of opening our fourth site down in Brighton now. But again, we've absolutely been sort of paramount to avoid any sense of sort of selling out, and that has ensured that we've had sort of entirely positive sentiment all the way through. I think the first bricks and mortar site opened about 18 months ago. Now, we didn't have as many of your snazzy measuring tools. We preferred to go for the old-fashioned cash and queuing model of evaluation. But the guys took something like £5 million in their first year off a tiny investment. There's still queues around the block, and we've I believe that at launch there was sort of something like 50 positive mentions on Twitter every day. And Twitter was really the sort of primary tool that we've used to drive that, and subsequently always used it to engage mainstream media. So that's it really. The budget was less than £10,000. I think the business value is over £15 million. There was no sort of marketing done. We really used a handful of people and a Twitter account to ensure that all the interesting, fun stuff that we were doing has been amplified and distributed in the right way, and then allowed mainstream media to report on how people are excited and engaged, which opens up a huge swathe of additional media for you. It allows you to get into the going out pages. We've had fashion shoots done there, and it doesn't allow you to be confined to the kind of ghetto of sort of restaurant reviews dominated by people like A.A. Gill, who frankly are sort of anti-advocates and just really carry very little weight in this modern age. So that's it really.
Good stuff. Thank you.